I got to fix that. I got to fix that at the end. We're like a second late. Like the intro's like a second late off the beat. But we are live. Joe, we are doing this during the day. It's not Saturday morning. It's the SEC on Believe. What's happening? Uh-oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
I was trying to say I'm actually awake for once, but apparently that's not the case because I'm not paying attention. But I'm excited because we've got a lot of crap that's floating around the college football sphere. We all thought that the Bryan Harsin news was what lit everyone on fire, but now everyone, as always, when the rankings come out, everyone's freaking out. And I'm excited to talk about all of it. And I'm glad that we're talking in the middle of the week.
Yeah, and it's something that we're going to be trying to do. It's a lot of fun. Look, November, the first week in November is always the biggest month, in my opinion, for college football because everybody starts separating themselves. You start getting the teams, whether it be in the Pac-12, whether it be in the SEC, ACC, regardless of where it is, you start separating yourself even further. And I know that we talk about the SEC here, but obviously we have LSU and Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee that will square off for the West and East title, which we'll spend a lot of time on here today, as well as we got to talk about Bryan Harsin. We got to talk about who's going to replace him. I guess when you saw the news very quickly before we get to our first break, though, what were you thinking when you saw that he was fired?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're not shocked by the news that Bryan Harsin is fired. Like right. We were all expecting it. We knew that it was going to come, regardless of the fact that if he had enough time or not. It was just his time had come. They were trying to push him out, and we were trying to figure out which week it was going to be. It was a little annoying, the time of it. Kind of wish it was on a Sunday, maybe when we had a little bit more time to react instead of it's in the middle of a work day on a Monday. But they start their search now. John Cohen is going to be looking around, and they're going to be trying to find a new head coach, and better start earlier rather than later with all these other openings that popped up in earlier weeks.
I feel like Bryan Harsin knew. Now, some of the media around Auburn said that he didn't know, but Cohen was hired, and then his first act was that he was fired. Nevertheless, Joe, I'm going to get into this after the break. I'm so conflicted. Now, do I think he deserved to be fired because of what's going on? Yes, a little bit, but on the field, maybe. But he was 9-12, right? Like yes. It's not as if they did not do things to prohibit him, but he's not a good recruiter. He didn't get anybody good out of the portal. You cannot recruit poorly in the SEC or you're going to get absolutely demolished. So we'll talk on Bryan Harsin. We'll talk about who we think we should replace him. Just saying, Deion's backpedaling to Auburn. I'm just saying. We'll see. We'll talk about that as well. Obviously, as we mentioned, the first college football playoff ranking came out. We have some SEC teams in there. A lot of people, Joe, last night on my LSU show was freaking out about LSU being at 10. But on our Sunday, so people who don't know, for us to Believe, Sunday we vote on our top 10.
Yes.
I'm just going to throw this out there.
I think you're the only person.
Big Daddy had LSU at number 10. Maybe there was a little birdie chirping in my ear.
Are you saying you think that you knew that or did you know?
I'm not saying, just know that, us Italians have connections. It's not just mob ties that we have here. It's playoff committee ties too, okay? I'm going to tell you why, though, especially for LSU, why they got there. But I'm going to also tell you what they think of Tennessee. If they were to lose, I don't think they fall behind 3. No. So we'll get into that as well. And then, obviously, as we talked about, we'll preview Georgia, Tennessee, and LSU. And I can't stand saying this, but because the devil coaches them, Alabama, we'll talk on them as well. All right. Joe, let's do this, though.
Yeah.
Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share. So many of you are watching us live on Facebook right now. Hit the like and share. Yes, it is a lunchtime special. I know all of you in the bayou are, getting you some etouffee, some gumbo. Stop it. Listen, hit the like and share. Subscribe to AYS Believe on YouTube, but we're also streaming on Joe's platform. Joe, you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, we're streaming live on Hack City, which we do our full college football reactions. But now if we're going to be doing this in the middle of the day, will be up on Hex City as well, which is just college football, NFL draft, recruiting, everything college football, less specific to the SEC, but still plenty of great content.
I want you to rip Lester Abear alive. He says Harry Potter's brother. Rip him alive.
Hey, look, that's better than the Dahmer comments, man. I gotta wait. Really quick story. So I'm gonna text you the picture when we go to break. I went as Joe Burrow for Halloween because I needed to do a last second Halloween costume. I went as Joe Shiesty, and I thought I pulled it off. And I went to this party, and so many people were coming up to me and being like, oh, Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow. It was a hit. But my a-hole friend, Joe Sorallo, decided to go into the bathroom and tell everyone, hey, if you see the guy who looks like Joe Burrow, tell him he looks like Jeffrey Dahmer. So I had like 10 more people. It ruined my night. Absolutely ruined my night. Come up to me. I cut my hair and everything. I didn't look anything like Jeff Dahmer. So I had all these people coming up and telling me that. So that kind of ruined my Halloween.
Lester Abear tells me to kick rocks. You can't come in here and say my co-host looks like Harry Potter and then tell me to kick rocks. You can't do it. All right, Lester, you know we love you. Okay, so everybody do us a favor, hit the like and share. Let's do this, though, Joe. Let's get to our first break. We got to talk about Bryan Harsin. Got so much we got to talk about. Talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Guys, that's where I place all my bets. You're wondering where I placed a bet on Hendon Hooker to win the Heisman. That's where I did it at. Let's talk about them and our good friends over at GM Varno & Sons. Guys, we return in 1 minute. Talk some SEC. Next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. With over 65 years of experience, nobody is better equipped to service in your vehicle than GM Varno & Sons. RV repair, big rig overhauls, motorhome chassis, routine maintenance, tire rotations, tire sales. No job is too big or too small over at GM. If you break down the side of the road in the greater Baton Rouge area, they will come and get you. And the best thing about that is that they can come and get you, and then they can bring your vehicle back to their shop and start the repairs right then. Again, GM Varno & Sons, go see them over at 2500 Fuller Boulevard. Give them a call at 225-664-9992, 225-664-9992. Tell them your good friend Blake Ruffino sent you on by. All right, so Joe just sent me the photo. So, Joe, can you do me a favor? I need you to click what I'm about to say and put it not on Believe Sports. I need you to put it on Believe Network. So we're at 10 minutes and 47 seconds.
Yeah, I'm writing that in the private chat.
Okay, so Josh Fisher, our good buddy, I believe, I think the Charity Stripe, correct? That's their podcast.
Yeah.
He dressed up as Elf, right? Fisher, you can't say anything about Sam Elliger ever being good again when you dress up like Elf. I mean, come on, dude. I mean, my man over here. Look, Texas is not this.
We're back.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're Rudy Poo. I can't wait till they come to the SEC. It's going to be bad. Fisher, I'm calling you out. All right. But it is pretty good costume, though, dressing up as Elf. Did he walk around saying, my name is Buddy the Elf, what's your favorite color? Like, is Fisher that kind of dude?
He is that kind of dude. He was also going up and putting his leg up for as many different people to pick him up, which was a great bit in and of itself. But, odd costume, but it worked. It worked.
I think it fits him. I think it suits him well. Okay, so look, let's get to this, Joe, because we do have a lot that we have to get into. Number one, Bryan Harsin was fired this week. I'll give you the floor because I feel like I'm just going to tee off on Auburn. We're probably going to go viral on this one. I think Auburn needs to come to the forefront because it's ridiculous on what they did during the offseason. But to kind of continue to go into a little bit more detail, what's going on in Auburn in your opinion?
Yeah, it was clearly a witch hunt to get rid of Bryan Harsin. There was the politics that go into everything with the boosters and the previous athletic director. And as soon as they hired Cohen, I think a lot of us were not surprised that they were just going to edge him out immediately. Now, I didn't think it was going to be in the first 15 minutes that Cohen was going to be hired. I will say this, though. The results in the field aren't great. And when you're coaching at Auburn, you need to at least be respectable on the field. Like, you need to look competitive. And they actually looked kind of competitive last year in some games, but not consistently. The big main issue is that Bryan Harsin was a terrible recruiter, one of the worst recruiting classes in his time at Auburn in the entire SEC. That's the problem right there. If you don't recruit in the SEC, you're not going to win football games. This isn't Boise State. This isn't the Big 12 or the ACC where you can have a mediocre recruiting class and then make up for it with play calling. They didn't have the talent. The talent wasn't there. And I understand that it was a little bit unethical in some ways, the way that they tried to get rid of him, but he didn't produce the results. He didn't produce the results. So they're probably better off going another direction. It's probably better off for Bryan Harsin to start fresh somewhere else, and he needs to probably stay in the Midwest and stay out of the SEC.
I agree with you on that last comment. Look, some guys just aren't SEC dudes. That's why when everybody ripped Lincoln Riley alive for going to USC and not entertaining LSU as much, he's not an SEC dude. He doesn't want to be here, and there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. He just doesn't want to be here. Maybe he's scared a little bit. It's whatever. But here's my thing, and I'm going to call Auburn out. Now, we might get blocked. Hopefully Braun knows Elon to get us, back on if it happens. Bro, I can't tell you, as a man that's married, and obviously most people know, we just had our second child. Look, as a man, when you come out and you do a smear campaign on somebody that goes unfounded. So if you don't remember, Auburn, it was coming out about Bryan Harsin around Auburn that he had cheated on his wife with a secretary, that she was at Boise with him, and I think her name was Clessy, whatever. Regardless, I'm going to tell you this: I would have left Auburn and sued him, because if I didn't do it and it went unfounded, that's your ass. And literally, Auburn's got to get to a scenario in a situation where the boosters have to get out of the way. You will never win a national title if you continue to micromanage things. Do you know why great companies succeed? They succeed because they allowed the best of the best, the people that are under them, to do what they need to do to win championships, to make you a Fortune 500 company. They're not doing that. And whoever the power brokers is at Auburn, shame on you. It's your fault. Bryan Harsin's a good offensive mind. Now, is he 9-12? Sure. They were also number 12 in the country last year. And you want to know what really pisses me off more? How do we know he can't recruit? Here's why I asked that question. All the turmoil was coming out during National Signing Day.
That is true. That's a good point.
So, I mean, you want to know why he can't get transfers out of the portal? Well, is he about to be fired? I mean, do I think he's a good recruiter? No. But yeah, you cannot sit here and tell me that everything that you did to this man, it is more, and you brought this up, it is more than aggravating to see people that will, and our country's gotten to this, and I don't get political, but our country is like this. If you don't like somebody, let's say that there's a sexual assault or a cheating scandal against them. Brother, I mean, look, I know one thing. Say I'm cheating on my wife, because I'm not, and I never will. Say I'm doing it, see what happens. Because, brother, I will promise you right now, as I'm going to do to Josh Fisher, if he clowns you 4 or 5 more times, we're throwing these Irish hands. Not the fighting Irish. We're throwing these Italian hands. That pisses me off, Joe. Bottom line. Should he be fired? Okay, it's whatever. They weren't doing good on the field. I get it. Sounds good. But when you did what you did, I can't come back from that.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And I think that there are a lot of ethical dilemmas that come into play here, and nothing's probably going to come of it. I'm sure that Harsin just wants to get as far removed from this as possible, because you try to go toe-to-toe with these boosters and you put yourself in the spotlight, and eventually you have like a court case involved. It might impact his ability to get a new job. And some program might not want to hire somebody who's currently in an ongoing lawsuit or whatever because it's a distraction for your program. Separate from that, though, part of me, the recruiting thing, the evidence I point to that is all the guys that have been tweeting and some of the guys that kind of talk about, you hear these murmurs of the players that just don't like him and don't respect him and thought that like he wasn't a good guy. And all the guys that tried to enter the portal, like Tank Bigsby tried to enter, Bo Nix does end up entering.
Yep.
I just feel like a lot of guys just didn't vibe with him. And I think that when you're not winning and your coach is a dickhead, it's really, really hard to buy in. It's kind of like what Joe Judge is like a really good example. Like he was a total definition of a dickhead. Guys were bought in at first because he was preaching all these things like fundamentals and being bought in. But the minute you start losing, you're a clown. And I part of me feels that the recruiting stems from that just inability to connect with these kids. I kind of still lean that he's not a good recruiter, but you bring up a good point. The timing of it's horrible. It's horrible. It's hard to, if you're a kid and you're even the parent of a recruit, how do you justify sending your kid to a school where the coach might get fired for doing nefarious things? It's a very good point.
Joe, I'm fine with that. Is he probably not a great recruiter? Probably not. Did he deserve to be fired for things that were happening on the field? Probably so. I agree with everything you said. That's not even remotely like wrong. Like you're dead accurate. They still went toe-to-toe with teams like Alabama in year one. Okay? A team that got to a national title. You can't take it away from Bryan Harsin, right? There were some things that I heard about Derek Mason. Like Derek Mason said, well, you don't know what it's like to coach in the SEC. And you know, Bryan Harsin's like, and you do? Yeah, at Vanderbilt. There were and to that point, the chaos, and I feel like the team splits because of that. Some guys take Derek Mason's side. Some guys take Bryan Harsin's side. They forced Derek Mason on Bryan Harsin. Like, they didn't even want his Boise staff in here. If you're going to hire a man, my whole thing is this. If you're going to hire him, let him do his job. Derek Mason's a fantastic defensive coordinator. If he doesn't want him, he doesn't want him. Like, you got to give him full autonomy. Now, here's my thing.
Yeah.
To get on the field, they were schematically, to pardon my Cajun French, they were arse. Okay? They were really bad at times. But they still had weapons. Tank Bigsby, Coy Moore, they got dudes that they can win football games. Their front seven. Auburn's got a pretty damn good front seven.
Yes.
Okay, like they have NFL dudes. So he deserved to be fired, but we'll just have to wait. It was a horrible. You know, I don't like to on this show always transition to LSU, but Bryan Harsin is what you call not a fit. Brian Kelly does not find himself in that at LSU, right? Like when I think of a bad fit, I think Bryan Harsin. I don't think Brian Kelly at LSU, right? Like I just think it was a bad fit from the beginning.
Yeah, and well, the biggest issue here and some of the murmurs you hear in this situation when he was hired is that it was like a compromise hire. Like it was a decision by the previous athletic director who now is no longer there. They brought him in and nobody wanted him there from the jump. The big thing then that needs to be important with Cohen, that needs to be emphasized, if he's picking his guy, there can't be outside influence like you talked about. And I don't know how hard that is going to be to institute. Like, are they going to be able to prevent boosters from having an impact on the decision making, and then whoever they hire completely watching every little thing that they do? Like, we can't have that. Maybe that impacts who decides to go to Auburn. Maybe that affects who decides to take this new job, because, you know, ultimately, do you want to risk showing up and then everyone is down your throat with every little thing that you do, even before you make a decision? It might be difficult actually to find a top coach because of the circumstances and because of what just happened to Harsin.
I want to transition because you brought up a good point. You know who can do that and make them stop and not be all like that? His name starts with a the Lane train. Lane would go in there and make boosters would not be able to push around Lane Kiffin like that at Auburn, in my opinion. And to transition on guys that we think that it should be there. Look, brother, if I'm Cohen, I'm going to Lane Kiffin or Jimmy Sexton, and I'm making Lane Kiffin tell me no. Hey, how much? You're getting paid $5.5 million a year. What does 8 do for you? What does 9 do for you? Oh, by the way, remember how you were complaining that Ole Miss isn't giving you NIL money? We have a $13 million collective that our boosters just put in. Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated just reported it. Here it is. To transition into this, to me, Lane Kiffin's got to be the dude. You got to make him tell you no. Who is it for you?
First of all, with Kiffin, part of me feels like his name's going to continue to get brought up, and then he's just going to sign an extension with Ole Miss. It feels like one of those perfect. Like, I almost think that Kiffin's agent's just going to ride this thing out as far as possible, kind of like with James Franklin last cycle and Mel Tucker last cycle. It's going to happen. There is going to be an effort to keep Lane as much as possible, but as you're saying, there might be better resources, better location for recruiting. That to me is going to be a massive battle. Now, my favorite pick for this is Deion. I think that Deion Sanders fits this perfectly, and I think Deion Sanders has reached that point where he's proven he can recruit and coerce anyone to come play for him no matter where he is. He could be at a Division III school, and heck, he might be able to get guys to come play for him. He has that recruiting prowess. He has that swagger. He has everything that you're looking for in a head coach, and I think he's connected enough to bring in the right guys to lead them offensively and defensively. Like they are going to put together an elite coaching staff. And if we're talking about somebody who's not going to allow themselves to get pushed around, I have faith in Deion. I have faith in Deion that's going to say, just let me do my thing. He is that type of guy, that alpha dog type of guy that I don't think Bryan Harsin was, where he's not going to get pushed around. No one's going to mess with him. Before we get to just to follow up on Deion, I have one very toxic pick that could happen here that's not being talked about.
If you say Matt Rule, I'm kicking you out of the stream.
No, I hate the Matt Rule projection. I think that one's unrealistic. What about Dan Lanning? I feel like no one's talking about Dan Lanning because he comes from the SEC as defense coordinator.
I brought him up last night, so continue. We did again. This is what me and you are always a lot on the same page, but continue.
And the reason why I say it's the toxic pick is just the hilarity of if Oregon gets cucked twice now by two other programs and losing their head coach
in the South, from the South.
Exactly to my point, in the South to lose your head coach twice in a row. But like, heck, I would put him on the list. There's way more resources and opportunities at Auburn than there are at Oregon. There's easier recruiting than there is at Oregon.
I think that smoke's real. I think the Dan Lanning smoke's real. Like, my question is about Auburn. Do they pay his buyout to give him, But you look, and I said this on the Bill King show this morning. If you're going to pay the buyouts, you got to be able to pay the guy that you need to come in here to right your ship. So money can't be a factor in this. Mm-hmm. I like Dan Lanning as a wild card in this one, but again, I'm on the you got to make Lane Kiffin tell you no. Like the thing for me with Deion, do I think Deion would have success? Yes. Do I think he would win a lot? Yes. Do I think he would recruit well? Yes. Do I think he'd put a good staff around him? Yes. I don't know how he would react to having to play Georgia and Alabama every year, right? Like, there's something to be said about head coaching experience or coaching experience in the SEC. That would be and that is, to me, the only thing that I have on Deion that I like scratch my head over, right? Like, it's the only thing that I have the question on. How does he do in the SEC? I will tell you something that I heard a little birdie tell me. Watch out for Georgia Tech and Deion. Watch out for Georgia Tech.
I hope that's not where he lands, man. I'm going
to tell you this. Georgia Tech is starting to get pissed off. The reason they're starting to get pissed off is because there's a lot of big-time engineering boosters from that school that live in Atlanta, that live in Buckhead. They're tired of losing. My question would be, how – man, I'm sorry. How can they go and get Deion? I don't think it's a great fit for him either. Too academic of a school, but I'm just telling you, watch out for him. Okay, so you say that Dan Lanning's a wild card. Is there anybody else that you think is a realistic option for them?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I would like to check, but was there an overlap with Dan Mullen and Cohen when they were both at Mississippi State?
Yeah,
I believe there was.
Yeah, so I believe that there was.
That's the other one to me. And just the overall perspective of this, I don't think that they're going to hire anyone that's coming from a group of five school. Typically in these circumstances where you fire a guy, you're never going to go back to that same direction. You're going to always
– They're not going to Billy Napier it.
No, not Jamie Chadwell. Like, as fun as that would be, and a name that's going to get brought up this cycle again, he's probably not going to be the guy. They're going to do a total 180. So like Dan Mullen's a name to consider that like maybe if everyone else says no, you call Dan Mullen because of that connection to Cohen, and Cohen obviously likes him and they have an established relationship. Like that's the easy one. That's the one to say like, hey, let's connect the dots here. These two guys make sense. Is he the best option? No, we just talked about 3 better options than Dan Mullen. The guy was fired for a reason, but
for not recruiting.
Yes, it's the same issue, but maybe he now learns from his mistakes and he recruits a little bit better, but he's just somebody to consider because of that connection to Cohen.
Let's get to a couple comments in here very quickly. Joe, LGZ, kind of LGZ. I have to say it every time I comment. He says, what about Bryles? I know he's not talking about Art. He's talking about his son, Kendall. What do you think about Bryles?
Part of me just thinks it's a little early for him to get like a big job like this. Like, I feel like he'll end up with a more mid-tier job before he gets thrown this one. You know, it's too soon.
I holistically agree. I think he should go. Like he would be for me if Lane Kiffin did go to Auburn. I think that Kendall Bryles would do great at Ole Miss, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think and it's not a shot at Ole Miss. They're just not Auburn. Right. Cody McGee says, I read an article where the new Auburn AD is going to pursue Chip Kelly. Listen, I know for an absolute fact Chip Kelly turned down Florida when they hired Dan Mullen. Like, I know it for an absolute fact. So my thing is if Florida was going after Chip Kelly before and he said no, why would he come to Auburn? Like,
yeah,
Joe, to me, now I don't know if you're going to agree with this. To me, Auburn is the toughest coaching job in the country because you have to play Georgia and Alabama and LSU. And then you're like, brother, they have years. They legitimately have years where their cross-rival games is Georgia and Florida. Like there was a 3 or 4 week span in I think a couple of seasons ago, they had Georgia, Florida, Alabama. Brother, like it is. Oh, and by the way, LSU was 3 weeks before that. So, I mean, it is the toughest job in the country. I don't think Chip Kelly's leaving LA for that. I just can't. I can't see it.
No, and talk about like a lazy copycat version of LSU going and hiring a chubby, small Irishman with the last name Kelly. Oh, come on. You don't think that Chip Kelly's not no, but I'm saying it's a total copycat, like trying to hire a different Kelly, offensive-minded Kelly. But to your point.
I'm just going to tell you this. I've been sticking up for you a lot this week. Call Brian Kelly chubby again.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. He's jacked. He looks fantastic. He's the hottest head coach out there.
By the way, he did make fun of himself. He goes, he's been doing everything he can to stay away from chubby Kelly, or fat Kelly is what he called it. He said, I got to be fit Kelly, not fat Kelly. Because he said that Notre Dame, people made fun of him for being fat, which is kind of
sounds about ridiculous. Right with the when you're also being red. That's another thing too. Hey, I'm Irish too, and I'm also a little chubby, so you know, I totally get it. But somebody commented in here, I think he's content with being on the West Coast. I think being through the ringer with the NFL teams, like why would he go into a situation that's super volatile when the results he's producing right now are going to keep him in his current job? And he's going to be happy. He's getting older.
If he wins 9 games a year, he's never getting fired at UCLA. It's not happening.
He's like one of the greatest coaches ever at UCLA if he does that for five more years.
Right. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Is there any other wild card, maybe an NFL team or NFL coach that you could see that would come back? Like, well, let me ask this. I kind of want to just I don't see Urban Meyer going there either. Talking about coaches that won't go there, I just can't see Urban Meyer going there either.
From somebody I've talked to that knows Urban, everyone throws his name out there for Nebraska, but it sounds unlikely. He would likely go to a more warmer weather location. Auburn might fit that, but I just don't think that's who Auburn wants to go for. They're going to try and
toughest. Well, you can't fire Bryan Harsin and say that some of it's a little bit with cause because he was having sex with the secretary, and then Urban Meyer stick his finger up another girl's booty. I don't know if you ever saw the video, but the Alabama fan said LSU fan stuck his finger in my booty. Well, Urban Meyer legitimately did do that at his own bar, so you can't do that. I'm going to throw out one, and I want to get to you. I want to get to the playoff rankings or the college football playoff rankings from last night, but I want to get to this before we transition. There is one coach that is in the Midwest that I think that if Auburn presented themselves right in the right way, he would come. Luke Fickell. I do believe that Fickell is the type of guy that Auburn needs. Stern, tough dude, a guy from the Midwest that is tough. Auburn needs a tough dude head coach. If I'm Luke Fickell and you look, the sale's easy. Look, oh, well, you're at Cincinnati. Sounds good. We're Auburn. Okay, I know you're going to the Big 12. This is Auburn. I'm really interested to see if Luke Fickell's name starts to get thrown around in this Auburn thing. Maybe it doesn't, but I really, really like him, man.
Yeah, I think Fickell is always an interesting name to bring up, and it's kind of if they want to go down that path that Tennessee went down, where they hired the premier Group of 5 coach that everybody was vying for, and I know they got Josh Heupel a little later.
Rudely interrupt you. Is he really that Group of 5 guy since they made a playoff though?
Well, he's ascended past that. Like with Heupel,
Right.
that they were ascending in that similar direction as Cincinnati did, and then he left, and then they've simmered down a little bit. They've worked themselves back up a tiny bit. But I think that Fickell definitely would fit that Heupel mold if that's the direction that they're trying to go for. If they want to grab somebody that's maybe not the big premier name and try to go with a new face in the direction. But part of me though also wonders, like Harsin was kind of like I said earlier, he's kind of a dickhead. So it's like Fickell, I know is a tough guy, but is that the same type of style of coach that you want to hire back to back?
I just think Fickell has I don't know, man. I just think Fickell is not Bryan Harsin. Like we know that he can recruit. We know that he's had success. And here's another thing. He has been a Power 5 head coach before, even though it's been in the interim, right? Like he was at Ohio State. So I do wonder how that transpires. But look, we'll see. Okay, so let's do this. I got to find this, and maybe you can find it for me too, Joe, because I can't find it right now. I can't find my sheet. I do want to transition, though, as we're getting past this Auburn thing. The college football playoff rankings came out last night. A lot of SEC teams in there. Let me just start off by this. Was there something that surprised you last night? Not just the SEC, but holistically, what surprised you the most last night in the ranking?
Yeah, the big one for me and the major one that caught my attention, I even tweeted out a reaction that I had to it, that Clemson being placed at 4 is absolutely ridiculous. Like that's the most surprising thing to me. And it feels as though their placement was done with intentionality to put the 3 ranked teams that they've played so far in the back end of the top 25. So it justifies where they're placed. They are always going to have homerism for Clemson, obviously, because of the fan base is going to be a big help here. That team is unimpressive. I have watched them. I've watched actually almost all of their games. I've watched a lot of their games, and I have been unimpressed except for their defensive line. Nothing that team does screams to me that they can compete for a national championship. There are a bunch of other teams that I think I could justify to be placed ahead of Clemson where they currently are at number 4. It doesn't make any sense to me. And those teams that they played is Wake Forest lost to Louisville. Syracuse lost to a mediocre Notre Dame team. NC State has been sloppy. They almost lost to Virginia Tech. They're not as good as they are without Devin Leary. So I have serious problems where Clemson is placed. They should be at 5 or 6. I would much rather have a Michigan, a TCU, or an Alabama ahead of Clemson.
Well, just in case you missed it, here's the top 25. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you do have Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson that round out the top 4. Michigan, Alabama, TCU, Oregon, USC, and LSU. Look, I agree with you. As much as I've been on this Clemson train, here would be my question about that. Is Klubnik coming in and how he looked and how that offense transcended in that second half, does him being at quarterback make Clemson that much more dangerous? I think that they're a lot better with him. Yes. 4 straight drives, 4 straight touchdowns. You can't take that away from him. Against a decent Syracuse team, I think DJ Uiagalelei, or however you say his last name, is a bit overrated. Mm-hmm. So I like the Klubnik kid more than I like DJ. I think it changes them. But to be in front of Michigan is just not right.
Yeah, so to talk about Klubnik,
there you go.
Or Klubnik, you might be right on the pronunciation there. I think in next season, in the next couple of years, he is going to be the reason why they win a lot of football games, and then they'll be back in the national championship conversation. But the kid's a freshman. I give him props for what he did against Syracuse. But for him to show up and hypothetically have to play Tennessee or Georgia or Alabama, there's no shot in hell that he's going to have a good game against them. That's a monstrously large task that he has to deal with. Yeah, it makes him better, but there's still, again, even with him in, they're not a national championship capable winning team. The 4 teams placed in there should be able to compete for a national championship. I understand that Ohio State hasn't really played anyone. Michigan hasn't really played anyone. There's the arguments that TCU is not as good as some people think that they are. They have at least shown to me that they have aspects of their rosters where they can stay within a fightable chance of these top SEC teams in Tennessee and in Georgia.
Well, here's my big things of last night. Number one, I think people over talk themselves on who should be in the top. Now, look, it's a lot of people don't care about the rankings. I understand that. I love watching everything about college football, so you can suck a sock for all I care. Tennessee deserves to be number one. I knew they would be number one. You can't take it away. Look, Kentucky's not a bad football team. Like they're not a bad football team. They're a middle tier football team. They blew their socks off. You beat Alabama. You beat Pittsburgh on the road early in the season. They had done things that they beat LSU on the road. They deserve to be number one. Here was my thing, though. Ohio State has no business being above Georgia. Okay, like
I agree.
Look, I get that Georgia's had some very close calls against Missouri, but Ohio State has not played anybody worth the darn. Penn State is not that good. I do have a problem with Ohio State and Georgia. I would just flip them. TCU, a lot of people are upset, Joe, that they're number 7. They didn't get a lot of love, I guess. What are your thoughts on TCU? I think that TCU loses to every team in the top 6, even Clemson.
Clemson's the only team that I don't think that they lose to. I think everyone else, yes, and I don't like. They have holes. They've kind of squeaked by in games where they probably shouldn't have won. But I love the Duggan Quentin Johnston combo and the offensive production that they've produced. I think just slightly neutral field TCU can slightly beat Clemson, but them at 6 is nice. Like I think them being at 6 is the highest I would put them up. They're probably going to lose to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. But I think that the other main reason why TCU is pushed where they are, it's just not a big fan base. It's not like a very marketable fan base compared to some of the other Texas programs. Like they needed that to be Texas. They needed that to actually be the Longhorns and not TCU.
Right.
But they're going to put them there because that doesn't sell for them.
Here would be my counter argument to that. The first playoff poll last year, if you remember, Oklahoma was at 8. I think that most of the committee believes that the Big 12, excuse me, do y'all smell that? Rudy poo. Okay, like that's what I feel. Okay, I will give you, okay, maybe Clemson. I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't think that they beat LSU. No. I don't think that they beat UCLA. I don't think that they beat USC. Brother, they haven't, like, I get that, they're undefeated, and I understand that. But, man, it's very tough for me to buy the TCU hype right now. I agree with you. I think when they rematch with Kansas State, it's tough to beat a good team twice, but let's keep our eyes on them. I do want to get to LSU. It's interesting. I'm about to be very petty. It's interesting, Joe. I thought Brian Kelly was a shitty coach.
Took me a second to realize what you're going with this. Is this directed at me?
He was a bad. No. You know who this is.
Yes.
Crystallize that. Anywho, I thought he was a bad coach. Joseph H. De Leon. I don't know what your middle initial is. I don't even know if your real name is Joseph. B. Blake. Is it Blake? Brad?
No, it's Bruno. I know it's not the good. It's very Italian. It's very Italian.
Bruno. I'm not calling you Joe anymore. All right, Bruno. So listen.
Okay.
A lot of people are upset that LSU was at 10 last night. Big Game Boomer, my buddy, freaked out about it. He hates LSU.
Wait, can I ask, are you on good terms with him? Because I think that guy's a dipshit. That guy's a dipshit.
No, let me say this. Here's what I do love about him. He loves college football, which makes me like him. Okay, I can get behind somebody that loves college football. Like, I can't stand Danny Cannell's takes. I love Danny Cannell because he loves college football, though, right? Like,
right.
I can get behind him even though he's wrong 95% of the time. A lot of people went after LSU and Brian Kelly last night. Make fun of Brian Kelly dancing with a 5-star recruit now. That's what I say. Look, man, they're getting better. Take the Florida State game away for just a second. Go back and watch the Tennessee game. They should have gone into halftime at minimum 20-13. It should have been 2017 going into halftime. Brian Kelly had to go for it on fourth down. Their special teams has been really bad. They're a young team. They are getting better. They've scored 90 points the last 2 weeks. This is what good coaching looks like. If they are marginally just close to Alabama this week, it's going to make the committee look great. I'm biased, though. Your thoughts on LSU being at 10?
I think LSU has a lot of nice pieces, but the one thing I have been hurt too many times. Like, I'm sorry that I keep bringing this up, but like I've been hurt too many times by Brian Kelly to know that this is it's kind of a facade. A little bit. It's a little smoother. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I'm telling you, for the amount of years of growing up that I have watched Brian Kelly and the amount of times that he has underwhelmed me. And I don't want to be the LSU hater on this show because it's fun watching them. I was excited when they kicked the shit out of Ole Miss. And I think that they're going to keep surprising teams. But my only thing is that they're going to lose a really stupid game. And that's going to push them out of the conversation. That's all. I can't tell you which one it is, but this always happens with Brian Kelly. And maybe he pushes past that in the coming years, but I think in his first year, he still hasn't gotten that out of his system. It's just notorious. And I've watched it too many times. I'm just saying, be aware, be wary, because it's possible. It's too possible.
Bruno, listen to me. When you're wrong, I'm going to start calling you Bruno.
Okay.
Bruno, listen.
That's justified.
We had a man who couldn't say his ABCs win a national title here in 2019.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly is a better coach than Ed Orgeron.
He also had a better staff, though.
No, he did not. He had Joe Brady.
Joe Brady and Dave Aranda.
But the problem with Dave Aranda, the whole Dave Aranda thing was he didn't let him call his true defense. Like we've had players, we've had coaches on AYS who come out and say, oh, look, Dave didn't run what he wanted to run. He ran what Orgeron told him to run. Like, I will even go sources as to say that he would give Orgeron a game plan, and Orgeron would mark through it and tell him he didn't want him to do that. He wanted to play man-to-man quarters coverage. Yes, maybe. Let me say this. Joe Brady aside, now Joe Brady's kind of fizzling out a little bit. Now we're kind of seeing that's a little bit of the receivers in Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you Aranda. But from a top to bottom, no. Because Brian Kelly is so much farther ahead of Orgeron, it equals itself out. I'll even give you this one. We had a man that ate 45 pallets of sod at LSU and got to 2 national titles and won one of them. Brian Kelly's better than him. Brother, he ate grass. He ate fermented grass.
Okay. The one thing I will concede on Brian Kelly, the coaching staff that he has so far, I think is better than any collective overall coaching staff that he had at Notre Dame. Because there were some weaknesses here and there in different years where he had some really great coordinators like Marcus Freeman, like Elko. Tommy Rees was always an issue. I feel like they never really figured out who was the right offensive coordinator. I will say that this is probably the most balanced coaching staff that they have.
It's not close.
And they look great offensively. That's what makes them good. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be number 10. I'm just saying be wary that there's a likelihood that they end up losing a stupid game.
You just been hurt too many times. It's like a girlfriend that breaks up with you before homecoming, right?
But it's not like – but okay, actually, no, you're kind of right. It is kind of like that. It's like me saying to you now, like, hey, my heart was broken too many times by this girl. There were too many fights.
I've been here. Don't do it.
Yeah, like – go ahead. Like you can, I'm sure you're going to have a great time. The highs are going to be great, but the lows are not going to be very fun. And I've said that a million times when we've done this show.
Well, I think Brian Kelly has had some good staffs. I mean, look at his DCs and what they're doing. I mean, he's had some really damn good DCs. I'll throw that out there. And really Orgeron, Dave Aranda did not come here for Orgeron. He came here for Les Miles and LSU. So he just retained him. All right. Is there any other ones, though, as we go past LSU? Is there anybody else that you think that is a little too high or a little too low?
The main one for me,
Please say Penn State.
I almost don't even want to pay attention to Penn State. Like they're there, but they're just gonna sit
They're
there.
always just there, right?
Yeah.
They're like the mole.
They're gonna win out, and they're just gonna plop them. They're gonna sit at 15. I don't think they're gonna move up or move down. They're gonna constantly get leapfrogged because they haven't done anything. They haven't really beaten anybody. The Tulane thing is what it is, but at the same time, like Tulane beat Kansas State. Like that's justified. They've got one loss. They're a strong program. The main one for me is I don't like where Ole Miss is, and I think that there were
you don't like them at 11.
No, because they were embarrassed by LSU. I would much rather have UCLA up on them. Heck, like I almost like Indiana since that, or not Indiana, Illinois since that Indiana loss has been more impressive in spots because of how good their defense is. That might be a little bit aggressive a take, but just in general, like
no, I don't think it's aggressive at all. Joe, in our belief poll, I had Illinois over Oregon. I put them at 8. Like I believe in Brett Bielema, bro. Like they've played a bet. They are Illinois is more accomplished in my opinion to this point than Oregon.
Yes. Well, no, wait.
You lost by 45 on the road.
But like I still don't want to hold Oregon too accountable for that because of just the circumstance. They're having to step into the
brother. They're going to play Colorado this week, meaning Oregon. They're going to play Colorado this week. Colorado's on a 14-game streak of not having 20 points.
But yeah, that's an easy win for them. But we'll really know for sure how good Oregon is, and I still have faith in them when they play Utah and then Oregon State in back-to-back weeks. They also have to play Washington before Utah.
They're going to lose one of them. They're going to lose one of them. I'm telling. And if they get to a Pac-12 title game, they're going to lose. I don't think. Look, you talk about Brian Kelly and not trusting Brian Kelly. You know who also I don't trust? Bo Nix. Okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Bo Nix has been way overhyped. And Colin, who keeps commenting in the
Heisman type season in the Pac-12, he was below average in the SEC.
Well, to be fair, he was probably in one of the worst called offenses in the SEC.
True.
The play calling was just they were asking that man to just run in circles and figure something out, and that was what I watched him do every single play. But Bo Nix has been hyped up a little bit. But the main point that I was trying to make, though, is that Ole Miss struggling with Texas A&M and then getting dogged by LSU, I don't think that's justification to be the 11th ranked team in the country. There are a lot of placements, and this Ole Miss one is one of them, of teams being put where they are to justify higher rankings for other teams. And we could probably sit here and do the math all the way through, but it feels like I can connect all the dots on a bunch of these, like the Clemson situation, even a little bit for like LSU and for some of those other top teams that like teams were placed where they were. So it's like, hey, look what win that they have over this top 25 team. It just feels a little bit like that.
It's hard to disagree with you on that. It's hard to disagree with you. All right, we'll move on. But is there anybody else that you look at and it's like I look at North Carolina, I think, they're marginally right. Anybody else that you see that maybe that got snubbed in the top 25?
I don't know about snubbed, but you place Texas where they are. Maybe you can make the argument for Purdue is they're 5-3, and I hate that Oklahoma State's that high. Come on, they lost by 48 points to Kansas State. What are we doing here? How does that make any justifiable sense that they got dogged like that? It doesn't.
Well, and Kansas State should, here's my rule of thumb, okay? And it's why you can't put Ole Miss ahead of LSU. If you get dog smacked and patty smacked, you don't deserve to be above Kansas State. Like, they don't deserve to be above Kansas State. And you got Tulane in 19. Put them in the top 25.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we agree, Bruno. Anywho, okay, let's move on.
Told you that.
No, you should have never told me that. I like it. I like it. See, people don't understand this thing about Italians. Like, every male in my family, their middle name's Joseph, right? So,
is it really?
Yeah.
Yours is Joseph?
If we had a boy, we were going to name it. The first name was going to be Joseph. I was going to say it was after Burrow, though. So I had an excuse.
Not after me.
No, you didn't bring me 65 touchdowns to Heisman and Natty. I'm just letting you know that right now. Okay. This, though, and we talk about this. This is going to work itself out. Number 1 is going to play number 3. Number 6 is going to play number 10 this week. So let's talk about that. Do you want to go Tennessee and Georgia first, or you want to go Alabama and LSU first?
Let's talk about the TC or the Tennessee game, because we just spent so much time talking about LSU, because that game is going to have serious impact on where the current seeding is, because somebody could fall out of that top 4 if they lose this game.
I don't think if Tennessee loses, they fall out of the top. Well, maybe they fall out of the top 4. They'd be at 5. I think it depends, in my opinion. But here's my thing. I don't think they're losing. I don't think Tennessee's losing. No, I don't think Tennessee's losing, because as we preview this game, look, Nolan Smith, the elite defensive end outside linebacker for Georgia's out. Brother, I'm just going to let you know, if you can't get after Hendon Hooker, he's going to eat you alive. My thing about Tennessee, and everybody talks about their passing attack. They talk about Hyatt. They talk about Tillman. They talk about Brew McCoy. They talk about the offensive line, which is big good. What nobody talks about is the running backs, and how they run the football. I'm going to tell you, they might not run for 200 yards like they've been doing against Georgia. They're not going to do that. They're going to be able to run the football because they spread you out too much. I dare them to put 7 dudes in the box like they did last season. I dare them, because if they do that, Tennessee's going to eat them alive. I think Tennessee wins by I have them winning by a touchdown. That's me. But I maybe I'm wrong, Joe. Maybe I'm putting too much faith in Tennessee.
I sadly think that you are putting a little too much faith in Tennessee. Right now, I lean Georgia. They're playing at home, and you talked about losing Nolan Smith, and there is a significant impact in not having him. He's supremely talented, and maybe his draft projection is impacted because of this injury. Pec injuries are not fun. I've dealt with one, and every time one pops up, I always bring it up, because if you're playing with a pec injury, it really, really impacts your ability to push off, to generate power with your upper body. But separate from that, if we're talking about a team that has the back end depth to fill in for Nolan Smith, it's Georgia. They have recruited so well in that front 7, where I almost think that they don't need to stack the box against Tennessee. If there's a team in this country right now that can play with a light box against Tennessee's front, where they open up a lot of their passing attack by running the football. A lot of people don't know this, but I believe I heard on another pod that Tennessee runs the ball more than Georgia does, because of the success.
But they also have more attempts to do it, though, too, right? Like because they're having
quicker offense.
Right. There are 22 more plays a game than Georgia is.
Right. It's a lot quicker of an offense, so it allows them to do it. But what is going to take any team to stop Tennessee this year is slowing down that pace, keeping them off the field. And if a team is capable of doing that, to me, it's Georgia. And I said this on the morning show last week, I think it was. They've got the pieces, man. They've got the running backs. Their offensive line's been a little shaky recently. If they have a good game here and Brock Bowers, they get into their normal rhythm and they get their running backs involved, it's all about time of possession to me. And if you can dominate the time of possession, you get a couple sacks, you get 1 turnover on Hendon Hooker, that's how you win this football game. Them playing at home, I think, is going to be a major help in the outcome of this for Georgia, and if they're going to win.
So I agree with you. Look, when I said what I said, I'm not saying that Georgia can't win. I'm not even remotely saying that. I think you're right. At some point, somebody's going to have to try to take the ball away from Tennessee and see how that works, because every time somebody else tries to play hyper ball, they get absolutely destroyed. I thought it was the worst coaching decision by Nick Saban in a couple of years to try to match blow for blow with Tennessee. It was a stupid philosophy. They shouldn't have done it. Yeah. Here's my thing, though. Georgia offensively has struggled not to holding on to the football. So, for example, when you go back and watch Georgia, Missouri, they absolutely dominated Missouri at the point of attack. The problem and the reason why the game was so close is because they kept fumbling the football. So I pull up the stats here. Georgia, or Stetson Bennett, rather, went 24 of 43. There was a lot of incomplete passes. He has not been on his game. And I will tell you this, if they do that, if they do try to play hyper ball and throw the ball 43 times, they're going to lose.
Oh, they're getting dogged.
They're going to get pun intended. Pun intended.
So you're 100% right.
That's for me. Like, you're going to have to find a way to run the football. Here's another thing. Tennessee secondary. Brother, last week I'd been dogging them all year long, and we dogged them on the show on Saturday, and rightfully so. They deserve to be dogged. Brother, they made Will Levis look like a JV quarterback.
Yeah, no, he looked terrible, and I think a lot of that also came from the pressure that they were generating up front and how bad Kentucky's offensive line was. And we know that Stetson Bennett is not anywhere near the level of athlete that Will Levis is, but I think that their team is much better equipped to not have to rely on Stetson. But exactly to your point, it's going to be a matter of who brings the other team down to play at their level. Like
Agreed.
You're talking about here. If Tennessee forces Georgia to get into a shootout, they don't have the pieces. They don't have the offensive weapons. They don't have the receivers. They don't even have the scheme, I think, to keep up with them. But conversely, hell, if you grind it out and you make that a physical football game, again, I really do think that Georgia has that advantage, but they're going to need to do that first. It's far easier said than done to accomplish it.
I think for me, as of today, as of November the 2nd, what does Tennessee have to do more to prove that they belong? You know what I mean? Like, I know a lot, and look, the betting favorites, Bet Online, the fan favorite is Georgia in this game. Yeah, I think Pooh Bear will have to tell us, our producer backstage. Mm-hmm. I think the spread was at 8. Maybe it's gone down to 7. I don't know. Georgia has no business being a 7-point favorite against Tennessee, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. But here's another thing too. Tennessee can play dirty too, man. Their offensive line, and I told you this a couple of weeks ago on our Saturday morning show. No, we talk about the receivers, we talk about the quarterback, we talk about everybody else. We don't talk about that offensive line. Let me tell you something else. Will Anderson is probably a top 3 pick. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he's top first overall pick.
Okay, sounds great. I think it's Cade Mays or Crew Mays, whatever his name is. Their center, the Tennessee center, when they would do stunts, when they would do things with Will Anderson, they clapped both Dallas Turner and Will Anderson. They physically dominated Alabama at the point of attack. Brother, I'm telling you, they can do it to Georgia. Now, Georgia's is much better in a front 7, but they still ran for over 200 yards. I'm not saying you can't, they're a really good team. And that's why I just can't see. Well, here, let me ask you this. Either way, I don't see either team blowing each other out.
No. Well, if it comes down to what we were talking about earlier, where it becomes a shootout, that's where Tennessee could possibly blow. Georgia's not equipped to blow out Tennessee. They're just not. There's going to be a couple quick plays that get Tennessee back into it if they are losing by a significant margin. But no, I mean, to your point, Tennessee offensively, like their offensive line has been pretty good. I'm frightened by the Georgia defensive line. The one thing that I as I'm sitting here trying to predict this, that I'm reluctant to fully buy in, is that I made a lot of the same arguments for Alabama when they played Tennessee, and I was completely wrong. I also said take the under.
No, you weren't wrong. Let me tell you why you weren't wrong. Because you said that they needed to do that. They didn't even attempt to do it.
That's
so
true.
you weren't wrong. They didn't even, that wasn't their philosophy. And that's what I'm talking about, Joe. They didn't take your advice. I mean, long snappers' opinions matter.
Maybe more of us need to be head coaches. That's what it comes down to.
Well, the last one who did that was Joe Judge. He sucked ass. Anywhom, was he really a long snapper? I just made that up.
Wait, who, Joe Judge?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't even know if he played. Did he play? He was at Mississippi State, was it?
Well, yeah, I think he did play Mississippi State. I don't remember.
Linebacker. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember him. All right, is there anything else that you want to talk about in reference to Tennessee and Georgia?
No, I'm ready to hit on this next game.
If anyone doesn't know, that's the LSU fight song. That's also what Alabama's going to hear a lot on Saturday, too. All right. I talked about it a lot. They're going to think I'm biased. I give you the floor. Go ahead and tell me what's going to happen. Go ahead.
Blake, listen, as much as I would absolutely love for Alabama to lose to LSU and for the excitement of just the landscape of college football, and as a college football fan, to have more parity, to have, more names to discuss as potential national champions, this is notoriously notoriously a Brian Kelly stinker game. This is a game where
tomato. I'm throwing tomatoes.
Hey, that's a producer. It's not me.
You show up. And look, I'm just saying that Brian Kelly in the past has shown up to games like this, and it's like they've got a shot. Like this is the year that Brian Kelly's going to do it. He's going to come in and they're going to play such a good football game and they're going to win. And then it just doesn't come in anywhere close. My projection here is, and I'm so sorry, Blake, but if LSU loses, they're going to get blown out. Like, I think that it's going to be because they're asleep. It's going to be because they're not ready to play. If they win, it's going to be in very convincing fashion. But I just don't think that this is, I'm so sorry, Blake. I have to, and I know that as your co-host, and I can't be a homer. Like, I can't, I know that this is very heavy LSU based listener base. I can't try to appeal to them.
See people in here now.
Okay. All I'm saying is it's just not this year. It's too soon for Brian. He needs a little bit more time. That's all I have to say. And I said it for like 30 minutes before this. That's my final point. It's too early.
I'm not going to say that LSU is going to win. I do agree to some extent. I think that LSU right now is exceeding expectations of where they should be. Meaning, I don't think it's fair for anybody to not give Brian Kelly, like, you got to give Brian Kelly credit. Look, they're the number 10 team in the country, whether you like it or not. They are in the first weekend in November, and remember the 5th of November. But they're fighting for an SEC West title. If you would have told me, Joe, when we started this podcast to start the season, if I would have told you that LSU would have a chance to fight for the SEC West title against Alabama in the first week of November, you would have called me crazy. I probably would have thought I was crazy my damn self. I agree with what you're saying. History a lot of times repeats itself. I just don't think LSU is going to get blown out. Here's why. This game, whether like it, love it, or hate it, regardless of who the head coach is. Now, I know that LSU got beat in 2018, 29-0. That game wasn't a 29-point difference. The teams winning at halftime 10-0. This game, when it comes to Death Valley at night, weird shit happens. Like, very weird shit happens. There was no business in 2012 LSU had any chance of beating Alabama. They're a screen pass away from doing it. My point is this. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I'm going to say that I think it's not going to be a blowout. But I will do this. Do you want to make a little wager on this game?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Are you going to give me the 13.5 points for LSU?
So, yeah, so you're saying that LSU will cover 13.5 points. Is that what the current line is?
LSU will cover.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Okay. I want us to come on the show. Like, you got to tell me I have to dress up as something if Alabama blows us out. Okay. And then I got to tell you what you have to dress up as. And you don't have to dress up long. I don't want to do like something ridiculous. I want you to be able to take it off during the show. But like, you got to come in here with like a clown glasses and hair on. Me too.
All right. I'll put up that wager. I will stick behind that.
Okay, so either one of us, whoever wins this battle, we got to dress up like there's a little bit of a clown. Fair enough?
Deal. 100% deal.
All right. Pooh Bear, do you know where I can dress up as a clown? I get it. I get it. I just think that they cover the spread. All right. In reference to breaking the game down, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you think it goes, though? Do you think, like, I mean, if you're saying LSU's getting blown out, you're saying that the receivers stink, quarterback stinks, O-line stinks. Like,
no, not necessarily. To provide clarification, I think that Bama wins by 2 scores. The blowout is a hair aggressive, but I still don't think that this game's not going to be in a winnable position at the end of the game. Like, they're going to be out of it by a couple scores. Alabama's going to close out the game. I think seeing the way that Alabama has played in some of their other matchups, and it feels like Bryce is starting to get back to healthy. They're starting to get back to normal. If they can get the run game going and they're popping things with Jahmyr Gibbs and Bryce is in rhythm, I think it's just going to be a lot of quick, easy scores early in the game, and it's just going to be too much for Jaden Daniels and company to get back into it. The one thing that Brian Kelly has notoriously done with teams in his whole 10 years as head coach, but also you're starting to see a little bit of it at LSU now, they're just a slow team to get going. It feels like first quarter, And it's always been like that at Notre Dame. They always come out not like flat, but it takes them a little bit of time to get going. They're not always a team that has been score right away on the first drive. It was always unlikely for that to happen at Notre Dame. And I see a lot of that so far happening for LSU this year. So if you get a couple quick scores by Alabama, it takes you too long to get going and get into the game offensively and get into a rhythm. They'll probably finish the game strong, but they're going to lose probably by 2 touchdowns.
What would happen in South Bend, Indiana, if they pulled it off? If LSU pulled it off, what would happen?
And if they get stopped by Clemson, I'm afraid to go on Twitter to see what everything's going to be looking like. I think everyone's at their breaking point. I think Notre Dame fans are trying to find cause for this Clemson game to justify Marcus Freeman. Like, oh, we're going to beat Clemson. They're going to get stopped. They're going to get their asses kicked. I think everyone just is at this point where it's like, whatever. The frustration point is at its boiling point, but no one wants to hear the shit talking anymore. So there's going to be a lot of people that are hiding from some of that criticism.
In reference to, and I'll give you this. We can talk to Notre Dame Clemson next to wrap up the show. But I'm gonna say this. I think that Brian Kelly has done something that we haven't seen at LSU since 2019, or really holistically. That offensive line is pretty freaking good. LSU's offensive line with 2 bookend freshmen, look, they're getting better. My thing is that when you went and got Jane Daniels out of the portal, the teams that beat Nick Saban, what do they always have? A guy that can run at the quarterback position, and he has to have a stellar performance. I'm not saying Jane Daniels is going to have a miraculous performance, but if LSU wins, the only way that they win, and I mean this holistically, the only way that LSU wins, Jane Daniels is going to have to go off. He's just going to have to go stupid. I think he's got it in him. I really think he's got it in him. Brother, look, a lot of people can say what they want, but when you score against Florida and you score against Ole Miss, those are still 2 SEC teams. He had 7 straight touchdown drives against Ole Miss. 7. Like, that is unreal against air, much less against an SEC opponent. They're going to need him to go off. That's my key to victory. Number 5, please, sweet God, baby Jesus, let him go off. That's how you win it. Okay, since it is your Notre Dame team, I know they're not in the SEC. Talk to me, Goose.
So, look, the deal with Notre Dame is just I've had too many people that I've talked to that are delusional this week and have expectations and hopes that Notre Dame could play well in this game. But I pinpoint the fact that Drew Pine is one of the worst starting FBS quarterbacks in the country.
Remember the tweet I sent you?
Yes.
Brother, he is so bad, man. I hate to say that.
Stinks. He's got no accuracy. He's got no athleticism, and he's tiny. I don't know how he was as highly recruited as he was, and I don't know how he ended up on this team. The fact that they didn't get somebody in the portal to back up Buckner is also atrocious. And what we've watched on a week-to-week basis against mediocre teams that don't have nearly as good of defensive fronts as Clemson, so that the guy's been running for his life, and he has no pocket awareness, and he has no ability to escape any pressure. So he's going to get killed. He's going to get sacked 6-7 times. They don't get the run game going. It's going to be lights out. Clemson's probably going to win this game by 2+ scores, realistically.
What's going on at Notre Dame, brother? Like, did they just not have the talent?
I don't think that they don't have the talent. Like, defensively, they're fantastic. Michael Mayer has been fantastic. Their offensive line has been very underrated.
Who's their starting left tackle forgive me?
It's either Blake Fisher or Joe Alt. I forget which one's the starting left tackle, but they're both starting a tackle, and they've both been fantastic. They both had
I don't think it's seasons. Blake Fisher. I think it's the other kid, Joe something.
Joe Alt.
Pro Football Focus graded him as the #1 overall left tackle in the country. By the way, 98% grade for him. Like, that's why I don't understand, Joe. Like, I don't think that Brian Kelly left that situation. In all seriousness, we joke around a lot, or I joke around a lot. They got talent. It's coaching, right? Like, I'm not going cuckoo.
No, and it's also lacking talent at the 2 main positions, which is receiver and quarterback. Right. So you got a bad quarterback and then receivers that aren't really getting open. That's a problem. There's a lot of problematic issues with that. He was a holder. Sorry, I got distracted by the comment.
Joe Judge was a backup quarterback holder and punt protector at Mississippi State. He played under Jackie Sherrill, and Sylvester Croom. Shout out to our good buddy Sylvester Croom. There you go. Sylvester Croom was a good coach, man. I liked him a lot. I liked him a lot. Interesting fact. Thank you, Pooh Bear. That's what happens when you have good producers.
Yeah.
We'll see. I agree with you. I still think that they I do still think that they're going to lose to Clemson. All right, before we get out, I lied. Bruce Feldman, by the way, Joe just reported this. I'm going to bring this up on the screen because we were talking about this at great length, obviously, throughout the show. So I'm just bringing this up. Bruce Feldman reporting Lane Kiffin is a top candidate for the Auburn vacancy. He was asked today about his name being in the mix for that search. He says, Lane Kiffin states, we do not really comment on those things here. We're extremely happy here. We got something special going. Have great support here. Let me tell you this. If Bruce Feldman is reporting this and he's saying he's a top candidate for Auburn, brother, he's heard something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's likely. And again, part of me wonders any murmur that comes up with Kiffin to Auburn, it's got to be great work being done by his agent. Like his agent is
him and Saban and Jimbo. I mean, all their agents, Jimmy Sexton.
Yeah.
All of those Ole Miss guys. And if I'm not mistaken, the guys that leave the Patriots, like Bill O'Brien and all these guys, their new age, like Bill O'Brien, if I'm not mistaken, his new agent's Jimmy Sexton. Like all of them have him. Like it's
and he gets these guys huge deals, and that's what you have to do. You have to start these murmurs, these discussions, and leak stuff to reporters to build that up so that the Ole Miss front office and the athletic department have a fire lit under their ass to keep him, to pay him way more than Auburn's going to be willing to pay him.
I don't think they'll match. I really don't think that they will match Auburn. I just don't see it.
Ole Miss fans better hope they do.
They won't. I'm just telling you. All right, Joe. It's been a great midweek lunch special, man.
Yeah, this is fun.
A lot of great viewership. I was worried about the viewership, but the faithful came out.
The faithful did come out. This will be fun to keep doing, and I'm excited. Hopefully, we continue to grow the audience each week.
Agreed. But until then, we will see everybody Saturday morning. Joe, who do we got? Do we got any guess we want to reveal the current moment, or we want to wait?
Well, no, I'll give a teaser. It is currently on an informal agreement, but our new Believe in Alabama host, DJ Fluker, is supposed to be coming on to talk about the Alabama LSU game. We're trying to fill some of the other slots. We got Texas A&M host Mandy Knight is probably going to come on. And we also Blake, Demontre Moore might be coming on the following week, or whenever LSU Texas A&M is. We're going to try and get Demontre to come on.
Sounds good with me. Sounds like we keep growing. You know why? Because we believe. Till then, we'll see y'all in a couple weeks or a couple days. I said a couple weeks. We'll see y'all Saturday.
Later.
Peace out, Girl Scouts.